Hi, it's week 9, day 4, and this week's instrument is the French horn. So, the French horn is a brass instrument, usually found in orchestras and wind bands. It has a rich, pure sound because of its circular shape, and so it's really good for playing soft tunes in the orchestra, like this. But it can also play loud and fast like this. So, the horn is developed from the days when we used to live in caves in the Stone Age, and people used to blow down animal horns to communicate with each other or call people together. This went on into the Bronze Age, where they had small semicircular horns which were heavy and small, and they used to use those for ceremonial occasions. And then around 500 BC, brass was invented, and lots of different instruments and horns were made in those days. The Romans had their own, and the Celts had their own sorts of war horns. So they were quite scary, loud instruments. But today's horn is descended from the instruments that were used as hunting horns in France and Germany. And then eventually they became into the orchestra, used in pairs in about the 1600s. So you'd have one playing high and one playing low. Like all brass instruments, these instruments are full of air. The French horn is full of air. It has a mouthpiece and it has a bell. And our job as players is to make the air inside the instruments vibrate, because sound is air that's vibrating or moving very fast. So we do this with our lips, and we buzz our lips like this. And then we take our mouthpiece, this bit is called the mouthpiece because it goes on your mouth. And that changes the sound of the buzz, captures it into there, and then that sends it around the instrument. And that sounds like this. So we get the different pitch or different notes on the instrument by just using our lips. And it's the speed of the air that you blow through and how tight and small this little hole is that you're making in your lips that sends the air buzzing around the instrument that controls the pitch. So the tighter it is, the higher the notes are. And if you relax your lips, you can get really low notes like this. Now in the old days, none of this middle bit was invented. This bit's called the valves. And so you could only play certain notes on the French horn, or any brass instrument really, and they had big gaps between them. So you just really, in the orchestra, get hunting calls to play. A bit like this. That's an example of a small one. And so we were quite limited as to what we could do. So we'd wander around with a whole bag of different lengths of tube like this. And they were called crooks. Mr. Dickinson, I think later on, is going to show you a hand horn or a natural horn that uses crooks. Or now we call them slides because they slide in and out. But we have this valve system which was invented in the 1800s. And that helps us to change notes really quickly. So now we can play sort of whatever tunes we like. And the air, by pressing a valve, is deflected through these different lengths of tube that we call valve slides. And now we can play any notes we like. So that sounds like this. So from going to just playing like this, now we can play any tunes we like. So that's the French horn.
Hello everyone, and thanks to Mr. Oglesby for that great video. Now, as promised, I'm here to show you a couple of the instruments that he mentioned as the horn developed throughout history. Here's a natural horn, a hunting horn. Originally, this would have been played on horseback during the hunt, as if playing the horn wasn't hard enough. And the other challenge was that you don't get all the notes, you just get the harmonic series. And you also are limited by the crooks. You have to have the right crook for the right key. So at the moment I'm playing an E flat, so that's my E flat crook. If I wanted to play an F, I'd have to put an F crook in, and so on. So it's a very challenging instrument to play. If you just play the notes on the harmonic series, this is the sort of thing you can get if you try and play a scale. Now, in order to get the notes in between that, to make the scale complete, you use the hand. The hand doesn't just hold the horn, but on the natural horn, you can partially or fully close it to get those other notes. So have a look at what happens to my hand as I play that scale again. So the big revolution for the French horn was the invention of valves. This happened in about 1830, 1840. This instrument is a Vienna horn, and it's called a Vienna horn because the Vienna Philharmonic still play on these instruments today. They combine the modern technology of valves with the spirit and sound of the natural horn. So you've still got a crook, you've still got a relatively small bell, it's a single horn, so there's just one set of piping. So it's quite lightweight, and it has this wonderful legato slurring sound, which is very, very hard to capture on any sort of instrument other than a Vienna horn. If you want to hear them played as an ensemble, go on YouTube and check out Vienna Horn sound. They do some incredible film score arrangements using just this instrument. These valves are based on a designer called Ullmann, going back to the 1840s, as I say, and they're on these long rods, double pistons, and that contributes to the wonderful legato effect when you play. So about the time that Vienna horns were being designed and built, a certain Adolf Sax was also designing instruments. Now he's most famous for the saxophone, but he did a whole range of instruments, including some horns. And one of his horns developed and became what we now know today as the tenor horn, E-flat horn. Now this instrument is essentially a brass band instrument now. Go to any brass band and you will have tenor horns, the absolute engine room of any brass band. Not many people notice horn sections in bands until they're not there. So there you go, flying the flag for tenor horns. So the key is in E flat, so it is a slightly longer instrument than the F horn. The valves are like trumpet valves. The mouthpiece you would use is similar to a trumpet called a mouthpiece. And the size of the bell, it's more akin to a baritone or a flugel horn, like a large trumpet, rather than a French horn. It's much smaller than that, much more compact instrument. Now it's much more versatile. you can play quicker stuff much more easily on it, and the sound is very, very different from the French horn. So I'll play a little bit of the piece that we're going to play at the end, the Hansel and Gretel, on the tenor horn, just to give you an idea of the difference in sound. So, the Vienna horn and the single F horn became replaced gradually in the 20th century by the development of the double horn. Now, the reason it's called a double horn is that you essentially have two horns. If you look at it this way, you've actually got two sets of piping coming off each valve. And you've got a thumb valve. And what the thumb valve does is it changes it from being an F horn to being a B flat horn. Now, if you remember right back in the natural horn, we talked about harmonic series. As the notes go higher, the notes get closer together and harder to pitch. The B flat horn is a higher horn, and what that means is that the equivalent notes on the B flat side of the horn are further apart harmonically than the F horn, so it's easier to pitch higher notes on the B flat horn, and that accuracy, particularly for high players, is what made the double horn the standard instrument of the orchestra. Now, this is an American horn. This is actually the French horn that Mr. Oglesby taught me on. So that's, this is clearly a very old instrument. But this is an American design. But there are many, many manufacturers, each with a distinctive quality. There's a whole English sound through instruments such as Paxman. There's a German sound through manufacturers such as Alexander. And then you get American horns like Holton and Cons. And the big differences are the bells are much bigger. You have a much bigger bore. You've got much more piping, which affects the sound. It doesn't resonate as much as the Vienna horn. But there's a lot more accuracy and stability in this instrument. And as a result, the parts for horns, when you get into the 20th century, become ever more challenging because the horn itself was able to meet ever more demanding parts that composers were writing. So this is the modern day horn. If you're a student of the horn, you might get something in between a double horn and a single F horn, which is called a compensator. And instead of a double, you've got 1.5 sets of piping, which means that you either use one set or both sets, which are equivalent. What this means is it's lighter and easier for a student model, but I haven't got one because it's locked down. I can't go and get one either. But the double horn is what you would end up playing. So I'll finish off this little demo with something that shows some of the agility that you're able to get out of playing the double horn. Watching this whistle-stop tour of French horns. If you haven't started learning an instrument yet, why not think of the French horn? You could do a lot worse. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Dickinson, and hello everyone, from me and Charlie.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Dickinson, and hello from me and Charlie.
Hey, I just said that.
I just said that.
Oh, you're not doing that copying thing, are you?
Oh, you're not doing that copying thing, are you?
Look, no, stop.
Hee hee.
Okay, look. Hey, Charlie, I've noticed that you've got your own French horn.
Yeah.
Where did you get that?
Well, Mr. Oglesby gave it me.
I mean, Mr. Oglesby.
Yeah, that's right.
Cool. Well, listen, why don't you going to give us a blast on it?
Okie dokie.
Off you go then. Oh, that sounds great, Charlie. I bet Mr. Oglesby has been giving you some lessons, hasn't he?
Yeah, defo.
Brilliant. Well, that's great, guys, isn't it? Because we've got Charlie with his French horn, and I've got my French horn, and we're just going to spend a few minutes looking at some pieces for the horn from the orchestral repertoire. And I thought we'd start just by playing a little bit of a piece of music by a composer called George Frederick Handel, and we're just going to play a little bit of his water music.
Oh, monkeys don't like water.
No, but the water music was composed in 1717 for George I, the king at the time, obviously in Britain, and he wanted some music to be performed on the River Thames, hence the water music. So I'm just going to play a little bit of the minuet from the water music.
Oh, can I play, please?
Of course you can, Charlie.
Solid. What do I play?
Don't worry, just copy me. Oh, that was good, wasn't it, Charlie? But don't forget, because this piece was composed in 1717, actually, the horn players then wouldn't have had the valves on the instrument. Remember what Mr. Dickinson and Mr. Oglesby said. So they would have had to play that same bit using their hand in the bell of the horn. Yeah, I'm going to try and play a little bit of this, and this is like an authentic type performance of how it might have sounded. Okay.
Okay, so does authentic mean rubbish? Hehe.
Well, it is hard.
Only joking.
Yeah, I know. So there you go, guys. That's how it would have sounded. And you've noticed that when the hand goes across the bell of the horn, it changes the tone, doesn't it? Let's move on a little bit now. And we're going to move on to a very important composer, Italian composer, who wrote lots of stuff for the orchestra. In fact, he wrote lots of operas. And his name was Rossini. And Rossini composed many operas towards the end of the 18th and into the early 19th century. One of his most famous operas was an opera called The Barber of Seville.
Oh yeah, he's like a barber that eats
A
oranges.
little bit. Anyway, Rossini wrote, quite interestingly for the horn, because even though the horn was still doing its hand horn thing and it didn't have valves, Rossini gave the horn lots and lots of melodies. So there's a famous melody from The Barber of Seville.
Oh, can I play this one?
Yeah, okay then.
Boss.
Are you going to do it the hand horn or just valves?
The valves, because my paws get stuck in the bell.
Brilliant. Off you go then, Charlie. Oh, Charlie, that was awesome. Anyway, so let's move on a bit now. We've played a couple of tunes from earlier on, and I just want to move on to a very important period in the orchestra, which was the Romantic period. And what should we play first, Charlie? Oh, should we play a little bit of Richard Wagner?
Oh yeah, he was nuts.
Yeah, let's do that. So Wagner was a German composer, and he composed a lot of operas, and he wrote a very famous opera called Die Valkyrie, and there's a very famous tune from this, which is called The Ride of the Valkyries.
Oh yeah, I've heard of the Valkyries. They're like some crazy creatures and that.
Well, I think they were a little bit like flying monkeys, to be fair.
Monkeys with wings, but I can't play it, no.
Okay, I'll have a go at playing it.
Whee, I'm flying.
So that was the main thing from The Ride of the Valkyrie, from Richard Wagner's Die Valkyrie opera, which was composed in 1870. Now, by this time, guys, in the Romantic period, composers were writing for numerous amounts of French horns within the orchestra. As Mr. Oglesby said, there used to be pairs of horns, but eventually these pairs of horns doubled up. So you'd have one pair of horns, first and second horn, then a second pair of horns, third and fourth horn. And it'd be the odd-numbered horns that would play the high parts and the even-numbered that would play the low parts.
Okay, so fifth horn would be high.
That's right, Charlie. Yeah, good. But eventually, composers started writing for 8 horns, maybe 12 horns. And a very famous German composer who did such a thing was Richard Strauss. And one of Richard Strauss's famous orchestral pieces is called Till Eulenspiegel's Lustig Streicher, which is German.
Yeah, you didn't sound very German.
No, I didn't. What it means is the merry pranks of Till Eulenspiegel. And Till Eulenspiegel was a very sort of fiery, impish character that got up to no good and was always getting into trouble. Hey, Charlie.
I hope you're not implying anything.
Yeah, only joking. So look, and in Till Eulenspiegel, there were many, many really complicated horn parts. And actually, the first horn and the third horn get to play the main theme in 2 different keys. So I'm going to play for you now the first horn theme and then the third horn theme. Okay, so as you can hear, a lot of these horn themes are actually quite heroic, aren't they? And the idea of the horn representing the hero has continued into film music of the 20th century. So we're just going to finish off. I'm going to play a little bit of Star Wars, but a different bit to the bit that Mr. Oglesby played. Okay, Charlie?
Use the force.
Brilliant. And then, guys, you're in for a treat because we're going to play as a quartet the lullaby from Engelbert Humperdinck's Hansel and Gretel. Okay.
But there's only 3 of you. Can I play fourth horn?
Of course you can, Charlie.
Yay!
It's going to be awesome. Cheers, guys.
Star Wars, great. Now, the Phantom Menace was rubbish, but I loved the last one. That's Luke Skywalker Rises. Empire Strikes Back. That was great. The Last Jedi. Oh, yeah. May the Force be with you. May the Force be with you. magic. I'm gonna have a rest now. See you later, guys.